It's autumn. The leaves have dropped. These are two tridents you saw way back in March. But should I really be doing any big pruning right now? And if I do prune, what do I have to watch out for? What do I need to be careful for? In this video, I'm going to explain to you whether it's autumn or spring. What really is the best thing to do for your tridents, or indeed any of your deciduous, this time of the year. Because sometimes I think some of our YouTube videos, me included, can lead you down the wrong path. You want to know more? Keep watching. Hi, it's Xavier and welcome to our bonsai retreat. And you know what, straight away I'm going to put my hands right up in the air and say one of the biggest issues of YouTube, in particular bonsai channels, and I'm going to put myself firmly and squarely in that group. Sometimes in our enthusiasm and our exuberance and our desire to try new things, we can push an idea that may not be 100% founded or shown by experience to be the right thing to do. And I know in a couple of videos, probably in 2022, I went on and on about the advantages with doing some more structural based pruning in the autumn, and in fact this 2 to 3 week period we have once the leaves have dropped. And looking back at those, I think I pushed too hard that you could actually do some quite big pruning.
We should be getting compensated.
Now, I've done big pruning and there hasn't been a problem, but I want to say now, if you're at all unsure or uncertain that any big pruning decisions, do them in spring. In spring, the tree is going to be pushing out all that new energy. It's going to have the optimum ability to do healing and recovery. And on top of that, we're going to have longer daylight, greater heat. In fact, it's a win-win for the tree. So if you have any doubts at all, especially if your tree isn't healthy, don't do any structural pruning now. But what can you do right now? Well, let's go and have a look at this, which is one of two trees that you saw me pruning way back in March 2024, when I did in fact do quite a lot of big branch removals. And if I remember rightly, there was a rather large branch right here which I removed. And truthfully, I forgot to do something that I should have done better sometime around June. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. As I say, took a big branch off here. It was one of three, I think. Removed a few lower branches, and overall we've had good healing down on the trunk, and we've had a lot of good growth from whips that have come out, and I've actually left those, and there's a good reason for doing so. Answer down in the comments if you know why I might want to leave whips like that on now. That cut was done in March, middle of March, and I put some wound sealant on it, but did absolutely nothing else. If you look at it, it comes away from the actual line of the tree, and I've wasted 6 months of healing there. So can I take my knob cutters, go in there hard, and take a great big chunk out there and look to start that healing process?
How should I know?
And my answer to you right now is there's only one place they should go right now. Back in the bonsai box. The only thing we might look at doing is perhaps using much smaller ones and just maybe neaten up around the edges. But even that, truthfully, is this going to do much healing between now and spring? And in my experience, the answer to that is no, it's not. What's the biggest risk we have right now if we open up big wounds at this time of the year? All the energy of this bonsai is going down that way. It's working on the roots, and there isn't going to be a great influx of new energy coming in via the roots or anything. Certainly there is suggestions that these things still get energy and transpiration through the actual tissue itself, but in terms of enabling it to use that power pack that's down here for healing, from my experience the answer is no. The only thing that's going to happen is I'm going to open up the opportunity for fungal infections and stuff like that through badly healed wounds. So I might clean up where there's obvious issues, but that's a big one. Right now, that's actually sealed and is unlikely to cause any problems to the tree. And that's my recommendation for anything to do with big wound healing. Leave it right now. But is there anything I can do right now with this? Well, yes, there is. And this is when you're looking at minor structural rectifications. Places like here. I've got a big stub there. we don't really need that stub. It's not going to cause any major issue if I go in and remove it. The only proviso is all wounds and cuts that I do create at this time of the year, just put a bit of cut paste on them. Because again, we do not want to encourage any sort of horrible fungal bacteria to get into our lovely prize trees. So there you go, that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to remove anything that's damaged or obviously not required. I don't need to touch these whips yet. Have you put your answer down yet what they're for? Having a look around there. We've got some buds in that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Interesting line. Again, that's something else I'll be looking at in the spring next year. Maybe just taking back a few areas which are a bit lumpy. But you know what? It's a Trident. Tridents are lumpy. So overall, it's not too bad. Now, I will say this now. This was one that had a massive great root coming out the side, if I remember rightly, and I think what I did is actually nibbled away at the bottom, took away quite a lot of root, and then put some rooting hormone on. So it will be interesting to see whether or not we do get roots coming from that spot. But overall, I'm just looking around. General, have we got any sort of algae or anything building up at the base? If we have, we want to definitely remove that. Because this is all about, really, we're preparing this tree for winter. Yes, we've got another 2 months of the autumn to go, but leaves are down. Now's an ideal time. So we'll get rid of anything like that. We've got loose, flaky bark. Anywhere where horrible little critters might be hiding their eggs. Again, something we'll talk about in a minute. So I've gone around. We've got little buds here. No point having that, we're not going to want that. As I said, we'll deal with that at a later stage. Just going to clean up, just tidy up just a few areas there where we've got old died branches. And although I've opened those up now, at the end of this I'll go around and put little sealants on all of these places. So I'm really doing what is best known as a tidy up. As I say, we can go all the way around. We can actually go all the way to the apical region here. There's a strong shoot that's going upwards. I've got a little one here that's going that way and one that's going almost horizontal. I don't know which of these two I want, but I'm going to keep them both, but I certainly don't want anything more from here. This won't cause me any issues if I go in and just remove that. Again, sealing the top. So all I'm going to do is continue to go around there and do what I'd call probably maintenance work. Those little stubs, bits and pieces there that I can remove now, could be done in spring, but it's something I can do now. Again, we've got an area just up here, which was something I pruned in the spring. I'll just cut that off, and we've got a branch that's coming out the side here. We've got these ones here, and then there's another two here. Well, truthfully, I don't want that one, or indeed that one. So let's remove them now. Again, I'll seal the top. I'm going to keep going around and do that, and then when we come back, should we talk about these? I like talking about whips. Now whip it! Yep, of course. These whips are kept to growing just in case I may decide that I want to potentially do a thread graft, and where I was looking at was literally something coming around here to cover this lower part here, and that would have been done in the spring. And I've actually done a couple of thread grafts, but we'll see those in a later video. In fact, if you want to see updates on the thread graft, now is a great time to hit the old ding ding bell notification, select all, because that way you won't accidentally miss it when it comes out. Because right now it could be any time in the next few months. It might be something I'll show you over winter actually, when it's all cold and miserable. So getting back to here, that would be kept for thread grafts, and the same with all of these. Maybe that I might want them for a reason. Well, the truth is something really remarkable's happened, and this is the big thing I'm going to say to you now, so ears listening out. Trident maple, a bit like our Chinese elms, different species but the same thing, backbud from bare wood with joy and glee. And guess what? I waited on the hope that that might happen. It's getting close, and I'll show you why I'm so excited. Right there is a little bud head, and that is going to be the branch that I so desperately wanted. It's a bit low on the tree, but I definitely want a nice strong branch coming out this way, certainly to wiggle and play with, which means I don't need to thread that through. At the moment the front is nominally here. We've got issues with something coming towards us, but if we move it further around, again, if it's here, then this branch becomes an issue. There's quite a few areas where potentially I could have a front. In fact, actually, go there or now when you tell me what you think. But at the moment, the trouble with this one, which would be an obvious point, is that the direction of the slope on the tree, it's coming very much towards us, so I'm not particularly happy with that. And also I know I've got a root base here I want to exploit, so we end up, and that's quite ugly as well, so I may end up wanting to hide that. Again, that's another reason when you choose a front, sometimes you'll have a great big scar that there's nothing you're really going to do about. Over many years it might heal, so yeah, quite happy to put it that way. And so at the moment it's notionally there. This branch is always going to be a problem right now, but again, subsequently there may be ways that in the spring I might even remove that. So that means, coming back to that, we've got this very interesting upwards and round. Then here there's a little bud just here, little bud just here. So do we really need this one here anymore? Then many people say, oh, this is a nice straight one, it could produce good movement or whatever, but regardless, I've actually got some very interesting movement here. So I'm actually going to make the decision right now, and I'm going to cut that right back into there, and that's gone. Am I going to waste that? We'll have to wait and find out. So we've got that little wound there, and yes, wound sealant goes on. So I'll do that, and then we're going to come back in and we're going to talk about bud selection so that we can promote the most strongest, best buds for spring when it really wants to push out and show its trident muscle.
Did you have to do that?
So that branch has gone. So we've got a bud point there, and on the other side we've actually got another bud. So I could, if I really wanted to do something more, I could remove this. But why would I remove this if I'm only going to replace it with another bud that's going to have to grow to the same thickness? So although that's a bit clunky looking, perhaps 90 degrees, some of you might not like it. I do. I think it's very interesting. So I'm going to be looking at pulling that right back. But an easier one to demonstrate how I'm going to do my bud selection is we've got this here, and there's a bud head at the top, another set of buds there, set of buds here. Now that distance from there to there is quite large. We call that the internodal distance. The internodal distance. But right in here there's two very dormant buds, and in fact even further back there's two more. I want those buds, and I'm looking at those not for next March when we get the flush out. I'm looking at those for middle of May when I'm going to do some pruning. So I want those to be my small leaves, and someone might ask me, how do I get small leaves? It's because of this approach. So I won't prune there, instead I'll prune there. In the spring they will be the ones that will push out the massive long growth, and I'll let them go out. And yes, I know there's a few of you saying, yeah, that's going right into the tree, but for the demonstration this one's perfect. So that's where the energy will go in spring. But of course I'm thinking ahead, so I'm quite happy for that to do that. All that energy is going to go that way. Meanwhile, that little bud will start to enlarge. They always do. And as I say, once I come to the middle of May, I'll then cut everything back to there, and I'll have a small internode, and I'll get my new flush, which will be working through the late spring into summer, will be close in, and that will give me smaller leaves and better building opportunities through the rest of the year. We look here, this will be one of the lower branches, this one here. I've got 6 or 7 sets of buds all the way along the length here. The first real usable set, bear in mind we've got this long internodal distance, definitely don't want 1.5 centimeters going out there before my next growth. So going on my system, I'd be saying, well, let's cut it just here, and then later on in the year I'll cut it right back here. But actually, if we get in close, there's a better opportunity and an issue of verticality. Verticality, I hear you ask me. So I cut back to there. Under my current strategy, the big flush will come out here. I'm not bothered because I know that I will prune in May back to here. Except for one thing. If you look at the setup of those buds, they're on the upper and lower, so they're what I call vertical, and I actually want my buds to come out here on the horizontal, and there are, I can see them, not sure you can, right here, two small buds directly behind these. So in this case I'm actually going to cut back to there, but I'll actually end up cutting in May right back here so that I can have that growth there, which is horizontal. So I'm often, when you look at the design of a tree, you're looking for the branches to come out horizontally, not vertically. And using that exact same formula going right around the tree, I'm now going to work my way around and work out exactly where I want this tree to be putting all its energy next spring. There is an argument for a front somewhere there actually, which means removing this. You could even look at this one here, potentially remove that. It's quite small, easy to seal. And that's probably a question I'll ask, although if I'm looking at a front there, I might actually like that, and I could end up removing this here. And that's probably the way I can answer this best. Would I remove that this time of the year? Answers down below. I'll tell you at the end. So the whips have all been removed, and there's got to be a couple of you going, no way at all, Jose. I'm looking at a front actually around here, which immediately draws our eye to this branch here that's going across this one here. The reason why I'm going here for the front is I know that I'm going to get a branch coming out this way that I can use. I'm happy then that the angle on this doesn't become so apparent, that right angle bend there. By jutting at that, this comes slightly forward. We've also got this stuff going in the right direction, various branches. So I'm happy with that. Could I, this time of the year, remove that? Some of you might say that's quite a big branch, and I'll say again, in terms of the relative size of this tree, that would be a big branch removal. That's probably not. So looking at that, I've looked in quite close, and I'm going to remove all of this structure here. There's some vertical buds there, but there's some nice big horizontal ones right in close here. I'd love something to come from there. So in this case, I'd have the option, I could, one, cut back to here and let the growth come from there, flush right out, and then again go back in May and get that much smaller. Or indeed I could say, do you know what, I actually want that to come out straight away, and look in there close and actually do that cut there. And there's the little bud that I'm looking at, but I also know that underneath it there's actually buds even closer in. And now we've got the line, and I'm really quite happy how it's set up. And now also realizing that, I know I definitely don't want that anymore. And so it was great to show you an example of how to look for your leaves, but actually what we're going to do now is remove it, because we really don't need it if the front's going to be in there somewhere. So that's all the tips. I've cleaned up the bark. I'm happy really that I don't actually need to do anything more with this until autumn. Or do I? Because I think there might be one other thing. But we'll come back to that at the end, because it's very important. And if you miss it, you may be creating a whole lot of trouble for yourself in spring. But let's have a look at the second one that we worked on in March, shall we? Now this is the second one, and I'm sure you'll remember, but if you don't, please make sure you have a look at the video. In fact, we'll talk about that at the end. What's strange about this one is immediately I can say to you, no, I haven't previously pruned hard on those whips. This has grown slowly. Immediately you say, why? Is it sick? Is it injured? Is it ill? Is it on its way out? And the answer to that, no, of course not. A lot of the time when we do heavier amounts of root work, and certainly on this one I did a lot more root work, the tree will say, do you know what, I need that year working on my roots. So what I'm hoping is that in there we've had a lot of root production, and it's concentrated everything down there rather than up here. I have every confidence that this will burst out in the spring of 2025. We had that that interesting, I call it the mangrovey root, that may or may not be removed. You know, I actually like these. All I need to do is exactly the same thing. It's going to be a lot easier looking about which buds I want, bearing in mind I know this looks like this is actually quite an ugly one. There's a lot of dieback higher on the branch. I will probably look at removing that. And can I do that now? I could do it now. It's on the larger size in terms of the relative relationship of the branches, so it's not harming to leave it there. I'm going to do that in spring. So there we go, all pruned up, taking it right back. You may not see a lot of difference, but again, I'm bringing things as back as I'm happy with, and sealed all the end bits, so that will sit in quite happily. Oh, didn't I mention something about whips? Should we talk about those? If you've recently watched my video on Chinese elm and why I think it is the 100% best plant for bonsai, especially for beginners who are trying to expand their collection, Trident maples are the second best. For the very same reason, they are just about as productive as rabbits as well. So you get lots of stuff from them, which you're going to see in a moment, because what I've done is the whips, I've literally just put them into some standard second-hand bonsai potting soil. They're in as deep down, and will they root from those, well, technically hardwood cuttings at this time? I have no idea, but I never ever waste anything. My two primary feeder trees for the future, for my pension, Chinese elm, Trident maple. Trident maple, always I'll put them on rock if they root, because that increases their value and they look so good. Both those species are fantastic. Again, if you haven't seen that Chinese elm one, you're missing out on something. You really do need to have a look at that. So that's the whips answered, and we'll have a look in the spring, probably later actually in the May-June, to find out whether or not there's been any success. But while we're talking about cuttings, I do believe in that March or the June episode, I took a few cuttings. Are they working out all right? Let's go and have a look, shall we? Well, they've been sitting down here in a fairly sheltered spot with some Japanese maples as well, and although a lot of them have lost their leaves, a few still have them, and bearing in mind they were taken 4 or 5 months ago, I think that means we've definitely got some rooted cuttings there. Could I have taken them out and had a look? Of course I could, just didn't get around to it. My process generally with cuttings is to leave them amongst all the weeds and have a look at them in the spring. And just so you can see, there's another rooted maple cutting, Trident maple cutting there. So yep, I definitely have success with them. Now definitely when you saw my sort of, I think I called it early summer pruning, thereabouts. It was sometime in June and we were revisiting these trees, and we certainly had a look at this one, which is a right old ugly brute which really needs to start from beginnings again, and this one. Now, as I've already said, this is going to be a real worker's tree, and actually I've had 2 suggestions that came in the last time you saw this, and because of this horrible root structure, which even I recognise just is never going to cut it as a display tree in its current format, I think it was the 2 M's, Mick and Mary, who both made it really quite clear the answer to this was probably to bury this a lot deeper, to try and get your roots a lot higher. And again, Yellow of Growing Bonsai also said these things, if you bury them deeper, will produce roots higher up the trunk, underground obviously. So that is probably the option, but also the suggestion is to basically get into a growing bed, cut a lot of this back, and just really let it put on major growth over a couple of years and re-establish probably some new primary branches. That could mean getting rid of everything and starting again from a stump. Also raises an interesting point. Leaves are all really green. All my other tridents have basically dropped and are ready for me to do pruning. Can I prune this now? Answer is no. Those leaves are still firmly on. While they're green, what are they doing? All that energy that's coming in from the sun that, well, in the UK we occasionally see on a Wednesday afternoon between 1 and 2 o'clock, is putting energy into root growth. So no, I can't prune this yet, which means I shall wait until they all go yellow and start to drop, which is great because it means we may well see this in another 3 or 4 weeks' time. Yeah, it's a challenge. This, yeah, I actually really do think the answer is going to be get it in the growing bed as was advised by the 2 M's, and let this thing really probably even double in girth. That would overcome a lot of these issues, I think. Anyway, you let me know in the comments, but as for now, no, definitely not going to be pruning anything right now, and we'll come back to it. So let's go back to the one that has some whips still on it. I mean, there's no doubt this one has also got, it's got that lovely thickness to the trunk, but there's a lot to do with it. I've got this great big whip, and the reason why I want this or this whip is basically I want a branch over here. So this will be worked way around in the spring, probably somewhere up there. If you are someone like me who has this tendency to cut things off, then that's a great time to put a little bit of yellow tape or something like that on, or a bit of tape. Thankfully, I'm going to remember, I won't cut this. Do I need this whip? No. So again, I already know that this one I'll be pruning back to desired bud points. That can come right back, and that will go into the cuttings tray. So again, this is what you want. When the leaves are like this, the yellows, they'll either fall when you put your hands lightly through them, or if you just hold the branch, just gently peel away, and that way you don't cause any damage to the next year's bud, and you're able to carry out that pruning that you want to do. This truthfully could again be another candidate for a growing bed. What would you do? Well, there you go, all cleaned up. I'm thinking the front's going to be somewhere in around there. As I say, this will get removed in the spring when I'll try and get a little cutting from it. That whip there is going to come around somewhere. Don't really want to have it on the inside of that bend, so it may be that it'll actually go out that way. Again, one major thing left to do. Okay, it was no great revelation, I know. It's winter wash time. Mentioned already in a couple of videos. This one is Growing Success Winter Tree Wash, friendly for children and pets, which is great because I don't spray it on children and pets, but it's always nice to know. I'm organically happy. What do? 10 caps of this mixed up in a litre of water, and that's all clear. There's no foliage. Got rid of all the greens, and all I'm going to do is give it an absolute soaking in this. Aim, get rid of all those little eggs that are going to sit there over the winter and cause my tree problem in the spring, because I certainly don't want my lovely prized Trident maples, which for the UK everyone will know these cost a lot of money. You know, something like this now, I'd be hard pressed to get it for anything less than 140, 150 pounds. It's absolutely criminal, but that's how things are, probably because of a BREXIT word, something like that. But yeah, so give them all a good dosing of your winter wash spray, and in fact that applies to all your deciduous trees. Once those leaves have dropped, give them a good squirt. Right, well, I'm going to crack on and do the same with another sort of 10 or 15 Trident maples. I've got to mow the lawn on this one. There's a lot of weeding, usual stuff. I hope I've made it really clear. Autumn is all about light maintenance, getting rid of dead bits, making sure that we've got any potential areas or sites for infection sealed up, picking your buds for next spring when we want that flush to boom out and give us exactly the growth we want. And of course, make sure if we've got whips, we've kept the whip we want for the thread graft next year, and indeed we've done the winter wash. Apart from that, they're all going to go down the bottom of the garden. They are very tolerant to the UK weathers. We don't get temperatures much below sort of -3, -4. They're perfectly fine outside, and in fact they're much more hardy than that anyway. So all I'll do, put them near a structure so they don't get wind blown. In terms of water, just check the top of the soil. If the soil's not dried out, then these don't need water. We're now into sort of colder days, less sunshine. They don't need that water uptake anymore. So don't overwater, because you'd end up drowning the roots. Early easy sign, green algae on the top. Tells you it's too damp. Hopefully you've got something out of that. I know I have. I know I've enjoyed it. I think I'll go back to my warning right at the beginning. Be very, very aware when you watch different YouTube videos. Each of them are probably experts within their own gardens. And that's not an insult. I'll say the same to myself. But just remember, if you're really in any doubt, stick to the tried and tested for when to prune, when to wire, when to do all sorts of things. Hope you've enjoyed my tridents in my bonsai garden. If you want to see more, in fact, if you want to see how I repotted them, how I reprune the ones you've seen today, then there's no way around it. That's the video you have to watch next. Apart from that, happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.